she was having to find batteries for the recorder. Batteries for the recorder.
Oh, she's trying to look for them. He was called out of town.
Our meeting will now begin, and I am Charles McKnight, Chairman of the Board of Elections, and we'll call the roll so that those in the public who are interested will know who we are. As I call your name, raise your hand, please. Richard Ashton. Here. Martin Carpenter. Here. William Case. Here. And we've been notified that Craig Kennedy is unable to be with us this morning. And for those of you who don't know who our director is, Glenda Clendenin.
Here.
Here. I'm going to ask this morning if Craig Kennedy, who is not here today, who usually leads us in our Pledge of Allegiance, if Richard Ashton would lead us in our pledge today. The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Director, has anyone signed up for conflict of interest? Well, not conflict of interest. Before we get to the public, I want to know if anyone here at this table
We have one person asked to speak.
to speak.
Maurice Holland.
Okay, well, just before Mr. Holland speaks, we know that we don't and cannot allow conflicts of interest among us. We've looked over the agenda for today. Is there any conflict of interest among anyone on board?
I have no, sir.
Okay, no conflict. So now we oblige public comment period.
Thank you, Chairman McKnight. I would just like to bring to the board's attention and to the staff's attention a couple of technical especially in Eureka, Western Pines precinct. Ms. Christy Callis is listed as an assistant. By statute, she cannot serve, and that her husband is a candidate for the council in Western Pines. And the other technical issue that I see is Susan Howard is listed as an assistant. They're both unaffiliated voters. She is not listed as that precinct. Her proponent precinct is West Elmwood, not Western Pines, Eureka, Western Pines. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We've heard the public concern. Madam Director, can you address those two concerns?
You have been furnished the minutes, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
and so we would consider motion to approve those minutes.
Okay. Everyone has looked over the minutes for the meeting. So before we vote on that, is there any discussion? If not, I need a motion. Second. It has been properly moved and second that our minutes will be approved. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposals, nay. So moved. Old business? Madam Director?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like for us to look at or to discuss the appointments of the assistants first, because as you have received information that the chairman has asked me to meet with both of the chairs about these assistants, because we have way too many in some precincts and not near enough in the others. And so I have corresponded both the Republican Democratic chair, and Maurice had already let me know there was another assistant that we had on the list that actually is a precinct chair. So hopefully Maurice and I can set up a date next week to meet and go over each one of those. So I'm going to ask that we defer the appointments until we get that straight. So when it comes to you, it'll be a clean slate that we know is good, if that's okay.
Okay, let's put that in the motion that we will defer until that communication can occur and we come to a conclusion.
Well, then I move that we defer the appointments of the assistants until the next meeting.
Okay, a second.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we would defer confirmation of the assistants until the matter that we were discussing can be
Now,
resolved.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
the next meeting could possibly be next Tuesday, right? And I don't believe I'll be able to meet with both of them before next Tuesday. I don't know what Maurice's schedule is.
okay, then what we need to do,
It's just to amend that motion, if you don't mind, until after we have been able to meet with the chairman.
Okay, then I will amend my motion that we defer till a future date when the assistants list is completed and ready for our review.
okay, the motion has been amended about the date to determine this until the director and the leader of the party can get together, and then we will be notified about that. Is there a motion? You make a motion, is there a second?
Second this.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. So moved.
So now we would go to those job descriptions for your new director.
Yes. One thing that we were notified, we talked about some changes we want to make. One of them was that a resume would be included. And my understanding is from the county that they will not be able to have that a part of it. But what they are going to do so that we will still have what we have commented that we wanted to have is that resume by them telling everyone who applies that they will also contacting them after their application to let them know that they have to include a resume. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Now, and the other matter that was brought up, first of all, is there any discussion about that or anything else that we talked about in the last meeting that we wanted included?
It appeared we wanted to talk about computer skills, and that
Yes.
is now in there, and that was, I think, a major issue, but it looks like it's included.
And that is included. So are we at a point where we can vote on accepting the requirements for a director that complies with both the county and the state? Can someone make a motion in that regard?
Okay, well, I move that we accept the Director of Elections job description as given to us with the additions we asked for.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and properly second that we would accept the requirements for our director with the acceptance of how the resume would, the requirement would be made to those or explained to those who are applying. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? So moved. And then we move to our new business, Madam Director.
Okay, under new business, you have the approval of the current duties and responsibilities of the director, which is the document that has the top state of North Carolina. And then it goes on file with the state, what they understand you're telling the director the job to be. So that's basically what we've had before. We made a little bit of cleanup.
So this was a document that we've had on file with the state for some time. I guess I didn't know that we actually have our own separate,
Yes,
every county I assume does that.
every county has to give them what you're expecting of that, of the director.
And at last meeting, that was we had at the last meeting, we went over most of those things. We came up with those exceptions. Is there anything else about that that we need to discuss?
And those can always be changed just in a board meeting. You would just need to update things because there will be things that come forward that the state's going to require that you might want to put in there.
Right, there are some pending things now that may be required to be in there.
Right.
About some folk who can vote and who can't vote, and how to approach that like felons can vote.
Is
And
that,
so,
not to complicate things, but is that a proper addendum to whatever our job description is? Because that is precisely how we described it with the state.
Well, I don't know that it's an addendum to a job description because a job description takes into account all of that. And just as Reverend McKnight has said, when you get a new board, you're supposed to review those job descriptions and see if anything has changed. And as he pointed out, right now, we may decide at some point in time, there needs to be some special efforts when we get a court ruling on something such as the felons. And then you're gonna maybe give that as a new duty and responsibility of that director to bring forward. So it's just really probably a good idea, which we never have done. As I have said, at the end of every year, talk to yours, not only your director, but to your staff of any additional jobs that have come up from the state requirements. And be sure and update both job descriptions with the county as well as your responsibilities and duties with the state. I mean, it's a changing world with technology and with all the many court rulings for elections, as y'all know.
Should those documents be basically identical?
Well, you would hope that that job description has covered most of it, but once you have that director and you go over those things, then it's very clear what, especially since the statutes give you the authority as board to delegate many of the administrative tasks. So that's the thing that you're gonna look at, Bill, most, that if you're such as, we've got a resolution, you know, about absentees today that y'all are gonna look at. That's one of those delegation things that y'all would do. And so you would not put that in the job description. So that may be, you know, something that you want to put in detail. But it's only going to be good as you've got that board. Every board needs to adopt, you know, what they want. And as a new board, you probably don't really know if you don't know much about the elections.
Is there any other discussion about that? Any other questions?
No questions.
All right, so we understand, the understanding is that is standardized, but the board has the option and the ability to change based on what new rulings come from the state and what our specific needs are. But like I like to do everything, let's put that in the form of a motion.
So let me, we're approving the duties and responsibilities that you sent to us in an email earlier, which I have no issues with, but that's the document we're going to approve.
Everybody received that, correct? Okay,
He made the motion.
And I was just asking a question. I
Marty,
made the motion.
okay.
Okay. Then I move that we accept the list of duties and responsibilities for the director
Okay.
as presented to us.
okay. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded that we will approve our director's duties and responsibilities as presented. You've heard the question, you prepared the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. So moved. We now move to our discussion of elections, office continuity plan.
You've been given that in your envelope. And this is a work in progress. I have contacted emergency services and we talked about the continuity plan. And we have talked to our IT department. So as you read through it at home, make any notes that you think of, because we're not gonna consider approving this or adopting this today. But the state requires that we have a disaster plan, and that's basically what it is. If we have a problem, how are we gonna continue our operations? And I have contacted all the alternate sites for voting places. And that attachment's not on the right spot, so just know it should be in order. I have all the emergency numbers that we might need in case of emergency. And in going through, I have actually called a couple of places telling them that we are required to have an alternate site in case one of our polling places has a fire or a sewer backup or something like that. And so in speaking to the airport, I can't tell you how nice they were whenever I spoke with the brand new airport manager. What a wonderful person. I said, would it be too disruptive if we would need to move over from that new fire station? He said, absolutely not. I said, there's nothing happening in my boardroom that couldn't be moved unless the board were there, and I just tell them that they would have to get out. So he was very, very accommodating if we ever needed their services. And that is a change in attitude and administration there, which I really appreciated. He was excellent. I've contacted the O'Neill School, both by email to the headmaster and left several phone messages to the headmaster. He has never responded. At the college, I've talked or spoken with two people about if we had to move from the garden center, is there anywhere on campus, which is ideal to stay in that vicinity? But is there any other building on campus that they would prefer that we go to? And I have not gotten a response from them, so it's kind of a work in progress as we go through. And of course, I spoke to emergency management, and we said that if at all possible, this office would just go to the training facility. But if we had to get, off of the vicinity, we would go out to the brand new sports complex, which is very visible and very accessible from 22 and 15501. So I'm having a good response for the people that I get to speak with. It's when I can't speak with somebody that it's a little frustrating to make several calls. But we will be working on that. And we have had we've had the emergency plans, just not all in one document. So we've got it in one document now. So I want your input, and you're going to see something I don't see, or that we just assume everybody knows what we're doing. So this really is your homework. Okay?
So this is a new document. It's a compilation of information that was out there, and you've now put it into what we were going to call a continuity of operations
Yes.
plan.
And we want to give it to the state, so it'll be on record with them. And one of the things is that all the old verbiage that we had addressed us when we had a resident server here in the county that was in the sheriff's office building in a very, very secure and locked place. Now, as of last week, they migrated our SIEMs and database with voters to the cloud. And so I'm not sure, I've got to call into them to give me the correct verbiage and saying what they will do to help us get set up in a different location on election day. One of the things that we do, we'll be taking all the laptop computers that have the database in it as a backup computer if we would lose all of our stuff. So we still have a current, database to look at. So Angela has looked back through it, and she'll do it one more time before we adopt it to make sure I haven't misspoken on anything. And so that's what we're working at. So I'm not sure, but we've just got new phones also. It's been a lot of, they're all calling it migration. I said, we're not migratory birds. We haven't done good at all. This thing with the clouds, if you leave your program unattended for about 3 minutes, it will get you out of the cloud in a second as security. But then you got to go, how many minutes is it?
I don't know. Don't seem
It's
long.
real quick.
It's not
Yeah.
long.
And then you've got to go back through this huge long password and all this stuff again to get back in. We spend more time getting in and out of the programs with the state than we do sometimes in the program itself. But it's all security. I can't imagine on election day how it's going to be to try to look up voters and then go back in and how long it's going to take us to get back in. But the new phone system that we got, as long as that building has Wi-Fi, all they have to do, and with electrical plug, we can kick our phones up and go to any building that's got Wi-Fi and plug in that phone, and it's going to ring where we are, so that the transfer of phones is going to be a piece of cake, rather than having to have dedicated lines like we did in the past. So technology is great.
So basic, go ahead, Richard, or whoever.
Now, this is part of the Moore County Emergency Response Plan.
It really
for the
is,
whole
yeah.
thing.
That's what
And
it is.
you've been a participant in the Moore County Emergency Response Planning all along. Has any other member of the staff here been involved in that? Been
We-
attending any of those meetings?
Well, everybody has used the word continuity now rather than response, emergency response. Yes, well, Richard, before they had the EOC and before I had my stroke, I was actually in charge of operations for the county when we would have a disaster, the snow stuff. We would go in. Our staff has always been supplemental staff to help them do whatever. And I used to be in the operations. They like for me to cook, y'all, that was it. But anyway, so yes, we have. And I'll show you what the county has sent me for us, but we have asked them, they're gonna come down and do a site visit. We're gonna talk about everything. They suggested that one of the alternative sites for the office would be the Senior Enrichment Center. I don't agree with that because it is a multi-level building, which would be very hard. Even though it's got an elevator, it still would be hard. Plus, it is a regular voting site, so we wouldn't want to pile in on that. So I did not include that in my recommendation. So yes, they are a part of this, and they know what we're doing. And they will get this also to review and make any comments. Just as I said to Ann yesterday, when we deliver the supplies for the voting places, we need to come back that afternoon and ask property management to go ahead and load on a truck tables and chairs and extra equipment in case somebody would have to be moved and there was a fire and we couldn't get the stuff out, so that we could set up another precinct very quickly. So that will be something that we've never done before, but I told Ann to do that, especially in this smaller election when we are sure we've got plenty of materials. Just have it ready. And they are on standby. Property management is on standby on an election day to help us if we have things that we need their help with. But they'll get to read this to their sections. Everybody's going to read their section in the county to make sure what we are expecting them to do and that they can fulfill that. And then if they have any other ideas, we'll add that in. So a lot of work to get this thing together, especially to let everybody know what they're expected to do.
So we're gonna have a standby portable election site if needed that can go quickly and get
Yes.
set up. Okay, then my other question, well, I'll come back to it. Go ahead, somebody else.
And Martin, we rent U-Haul trucks to take all the equipment out. So, and the county have an old U-Haul truck that is the county that we can get stocked with that extra stuff. So it can happen very easily.
So with the cloud being where all the data is going to be stored right now, so the backup is going to be what? You load the computers Sunday night, I think you talked about. So that will be the point of which the data is current.
And we tell the precinct officials, if you have a power outage, then what to do with the ballots, how to run they have paper records, manual records, but if they have several computers, the state recommends you shut down all the computers to save the battery life and use the one for vote or lookup. You can't print out their authorization to vote because you don't have power to the printers, and the printers don't have battery backups. But they can look up a voter to see if they're registered or where they're registered. So they need to try to continue to register vote. And that did happen last year in one of our one-stop sites out in Bass. They lost power, and we got a good taste of what it's like. And everything went smoothly, beautifully. Emergency services stepped in, got in touch with the power company, let us know how long they expected to be out. And the chairman actually was on her way home from Raleigh from work. So she went to Bass, and she said when she got there, everything was just clicking along smoothly. They were processing people without any problems. So we've had a little, I thank goodness, just a little taste. You remember that?
Yeah.
So
Well, right now,
right now, this is just your homework.
right, and right now, my point was that in the environment that we're in, with so many impending potential challenges, and with what some perceive as fair and some perceive as unfair, there's great scrutiny on this. So this is critical. This is critical. We do need to study it. The thing that I'm concerned about, though, is what we're talking about, how critical it is for us to understand is equally, perhaps even more important for those who are running precincts to understand this. And so do we have something set up that they can go through some training program or education so that if it happens, they'll be equipped to know what to do?
That is part of their training and has been.
Okay, so,
And you'll see, this is an attachment.
yes, I saw that.
This is what they do on the eve of the election when they meet to set up. They decide who's going to be in charge of what, should there be an emergency. So we've been doing that for a good time.
Okay. That was my concern about that. So we all have our assignment there. And this is critical that we study this and understand it. Particularly at the time in which we're operating now. People have to know that everything that needs to be done so that their votes will be valid, will be counted, and that there is nothing going on that would make it not what it's supposed to be. Again, in this time of scrutiny, we really, really have to make, because the people act frequently on the appearance of impropriety rather than impropriety itself. And so we must gird ourselves that we don't fall victim to the appearance of impropriety. Any other discussion on this? before we move
I'd
on?
just like to say, I've spent a few minutes reading through it, and I'll try to look at this more intently, but I commend the staff for assembling this document. I mean, I'm sure
Oh,
it seems to me that I hadn't even really thought through previously of all the things that can happen. And it seems that you've done a great job of trying to anticipate just about everything. And I'm sure that just the preparation of this document helped those involved in doing it to be more attuned to all the things that need to be done in this kind of situation. So I commend the staff for that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We have met several times with EMS, and it's kind of sometimes like pulling teeth that our operations are critical, because it may not seem life-saving, but it is so critical for the electoral process, as you know. So that's very, very important.
Maybe more so than just about any other activity of the county.
And it will be a living document. I mean, there'll be
It is,
changes, they
absolutely.
need to be updated, and that's a key.
And I said,
yes.
as I said, we've had it in piecemeal pieces, but this is all together. And it makes a commitment of the county also to read it and make sure that it's good. So it's the best route to go. And there is emphasis in every department, I think, because I see other departments doing it too across the state because of the environment we live in today. I'm afraid, it's just so critical, as Reverend McKnight has said. Thank you.
And thank you guys for doing that great
And
job.
you have some more homework.
Okay,
All of these memorandums concerning absentees,
yes,
because our new members are gonna have to try to understand, and I know you see those things coming from the state, and you think, what in the world are they talking about? But following our very first meeting, you're gonna have a better understanding of what we're talking about. And you have today a resolution that, Mr. Chair, I'm asking that the board consider approving. If y'all want to read all your documents and read that resolution, to give the staff the responsibility to do that preparatory work. It's kind of mandated by statute, because when we get our first envelope back in, we can't wait for y'all to meet. We've got to look at it and make sure that it's been executed properly with the witnessing and the address and all that sort of thing. And it says we've got to notify that voter immediately if it is deficient. Now, you'll learn what the cures may or may not be this time, because it's different from the last election. But the cures were continued from 2020. So there will be situations where deficiency can be cured by contacting that voter and getting information. And they give us very strict instructions. If the witness puts down there Inverness Road, but doesn't put the street, if we're familiar with that street and that address and can verify that that address is actually in Southern Pines, we won't say that that address is insufficient. We will say that it is sufficient because there's different rulings. And I know the board doesn't want to sit here in a meeting with 50 ballots looking at them. So those are the type of preparatory steps that these memos will address those. Some of them are from 2020, and if they are from 2020, the state has continued them into 2021. Okay? So it probably might be premature. What do you think, Richard, to talk about giving us that authority, except just to review the signature or the signatures for sufficiency?
You know, Bill and I had experience with this last time, remember, Bill? And so, you know, I think that that's a very appropriate action to take, yes. We had still had oversight after the staff had made their decisions. And there was a couple of exceptions that we addressed, if I recall, right, Bill?
Yes.
I think there was 2 or 3 that we actually discussed in great depth. And so the process seemed to work out well in 2020. And I would have confidence in doing that,
Okay.
yes. But that's my opinion.
So as I understand it, if there are 100 absentee ballots and 90 of them are good, and you all have gone through and say, yeah, these meet all the requirements, we approve those, and the other 10, you'll have already gone back to get action, but you'll let us know, here are the 10 that we had to take actions on. Here's why we took the actions. 5 of them have responded, the other 5 have not. But all we approve are the ones that are good.
That's correct.
Okay.
And when we look at it, the statute, they go out of the way to make sure everybody can vote or absentee. The principal concern is one based on the witness. That's where the principal area of concern is.
And that's a change from our last general election. Or I think there was only 1 witness requirement, now there's gonna be 2, unless you have a notary.
Yeah.
And my recollection is, and this may not be as important in a smaller voter base like we'll have this time, but when we had a large number of ballots, it would not be possible for us to look at every single ballot individually. We trust the staff to do that, and then we did spot checks of ones you had already recommended. There was no real reason for us to suspect any, but we just spot check it, and there's a procedure for that. I think everybody had to at least look at a few, and I assume we'll continue that.
That would be the recommendation. And as Richard said, you do not give up the oversight responsibility of that happening. And while we're not talking about numbers, these elections that we're getting ready to hold in November will be won and lost by 1 or 2 votes, Bill, because the turnout is so small. And so what we really do can impact the election greater than in that bigger election.
Fair enough.
So every election is important. Every vote is important in every election.
Well, I just mean that we will not have this huge deluge of
Right.
votes to have to deal with. So we probably can look at
Very,
a higher
very,
percentage.
very, very low amount. And I'm not even hearing or seeing much political advertisement, so I don't know what it's going to be like. I think if you're in the smaller town, you might have a better sense of the heartbeat of what's happening than we do here.
So this will be good OJT for us in a small election where we don't have a lot of
Absolutely.
absentee ballots before we get to a bigger one in 2022.
Okay, from the conversation that we had, and we have some members who've gone through the process and the confidence that's been evinced in what this staff has done, I believe we can put this to a vote about adopting a resolution to direct staff to prepare absentee ballots and call approval to open and scan approved ballots. If that is the case, would someone make that motion?
I will move to do just what you just said.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
It has been moved and properly second that we're adopting this resolution to direct staff to prepare absentee ballots and following the approval to open and scan approved ballots. You've heard the question, you prepared to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay, so moved. Is there any other business to?
Mr. Chairman, there is no other business, but I do want to inform you that yesterday afternoon, very late, I received a public records request. And they wanted all the emails between me and you as board members and me and any political party. And I'm not sure where it's coming from.
So it was a request?
It was a
but the source
public
of the
request of
was not
copies of
disclosed?
all emails, so.
The source of the request was not disclosed?
The source of the request, I never heard of the group.
Over what period of time?
And so I'll forward that to you so you'll have it. But I just wanted you to be aware,
Is this basically a FOIA request?
it is a formal
A
request.
FOIA, Freedom of Information Act type request?
And just know that they can come and ask you, we've had this before, about your personal email. Of course, I don't have that, so. But, you know, we've only conducted business. And so I'm not sure what the bases are. Did you read that?
I did not see that one.
So I will send that to y'all this morning.
And what's the name of the organization?
Maybe the AIO, I don't know.
I don't remember either.
But what she's talking about now is something.
Do you want us to go see if you can print it out for them?
What Director Clendenin is talking about now is what we need to be prepared to deal with. There are some agencies and there are some people who, some with sincere and genuine concerns and others perhaps without. And so we need to just make sure that there are no conflicts of interest. And as has been the case thus far, as was the case last year, that we're going to do what we're supposed to do, but not to be surprised to feel ambushed when these kinds of things come up. It does take a lot of time from doing business, but that's the world we live in today. And we're going to do it the way we're supposed to do it, and we don't need not worry about this.
And I did forward it on to the state board to ask
Yeah,
if they had
that's
any
what I said.
comments or recommendations on what we should be looking for. So
So I'm curious how that will work. I mean, obviously, well, I don't know if we need to get into it right now, but how do we, you have what,
I will do
You
a
sent
search of
us,
what
yeah,
I've
you're sending this
communicated
to
with
us,
y'all
aren't
and just forward part of this.
You're sending this to us, are you?
Yes, I'm gonna send it to you.
I'm sorry, I cut someone.
And if I get a response from the state this morning, I'll also get that to y'all, so you'll know what they told me to do. Cause if they did it to Moore County, there's a good chance they did it to at least six other counties or 100 other counties. So the state normally comes in and tells us if they can satisfy, if it's figures, they can satisfy the request or they give us guidance on it. So it's always best to check with the state when we get one of these to make sure we're,
And I
Very
agree,
good
we should do
stand.
that every time, so
Yes.
make sure.
but Mr. Chairman, that's all.
Is there anything else that we need to address today? Well, usual, I would like to thank all of the members of the board and our director for the spirit of working together to make sure that we discover what it is that we need to know, what we need to do, so that we'll get the outcome that the people of this county deserve and demand. That being said, we adjourn.